Stephen A. Smith, he came out a few days ago saying that it was a mistake for the Browns to pick Baker Mayfield first overall. Do you guys agree or disagree with this statement by Stephen A?
I do. I do completely. It was a reach from the beginning. Baker was not perceived to be the number one until close to the draft. I think that will go down in NFL history as one of the biggest quarterback reaches ever. It was not a very deep quarterback class, and you can't justify like drafting Lamar Jackson with the first pick. You can't say they should have done that because no one was thinking that at the time. But in all actuality, I think the Browns probably should have gone best player available in that situation. Baker has proven to be immature on and off the field. He's just not the leader that you want in your life. And his play just doesn't really make up for it. He's shown flashes of being a solid quarterback, but I don't even think he's given us even glimpses of being great. And we've already seen glimpses of greatness with guys like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar at a very young age. And I think 2 years in with Baker, if you haven't seen anything, I think it's fair to say that pick was a mistake.
I agree, Ryan. Or I agree, Scott. Sorry. I just thought, kind of like you said, from the jump, he garnered a lot of attention at Oklahoma, and he was a really, really good player there. But he had a lot of good talent around him. And for a franchise like Cleveland, who has had their fair share of quarterback troubles over the years and inconsistencies with draft picks, you would have thought they would have just went with a safer pick. Like this is coming from a guy who against Kansas, he didn't do his whole shaking the hands thing before the game, and then he's grabbing his junk on the sidelines, and it's just like these are red flags that you don't get from a first overall pick. Like that should have been enough, and it's just like you said, the talent at Oklahoma was good, but as far as NFL, his rookie year was his best year, and then he's declined since then, even with getting better receiving options like Odell Beckham Jr., for example.
Can I pose a question to you guys?
Go
Please.
for it.
Was Baker Mayfield a better college quarterback and a more mature quarterback than Johnny Manziel? Like I feel like this was just Johnny Manziel 2.0, except this time he handled himself barely well enough to warrant first overall pick attention. I think the Browns repeating history.
I think he's much more. I think he's a better NFL talent than Johnny Manziel is for sure. I don't think that at all that they are the same player. You can draw the similarities, but I think that Baker is more tame and a better player, but he does still have those red flags.
So should they have drafted him first overall?
I don't think so. I think they should have gone with Sam Darnold. You mentioned it earlier, Scott, where you said that this might go down as one of the worst quarterback picks of all time. And
I don't even necessarily think picks, because Baker's he's not a horrible. I'm just saying reach. He should not have been the first overall pick.
Yeah, I equate it a little bit. It's not as extreme, but I equate it a little bit to when the Cavaliers took Anthony Bennett with the first overall pick, where it was sort of, he's not as bad as Anthony Bennett, and he hasn't had as bad of a career, but it did just sort of come out of left field right before the draft. And when you look at what Sam Darnold did, just compare the two teams, the Browns objectively had a much better roster than the Jets did last year. Sam Darnold objectively had worse weapons than Baker Mayfield, and yet Sam Darnold led the Jets to a 7-9 record, and that included 4 games that he missed due to having what type of injury?
He had mono.
He had mono. He missed 4 games due to mono, and Baker Mayfield was healthy for the entire year and went 6-10. So it's 7-9 with Sam Darnold missing games and the Jets losing every single game that he missed. And then you look at the other side and look at Baker Mayfield, and he couldn't carry a team that had Nick Chubb, that had Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, David Njoku. He couldn't even carry them to a better record than what Sam Darnold did with the Jets. In my opinion, Sam Darnold's just a better talent, the better quarterback, and much less of a distraction.
The only pass I can give Baker, and it's not even a pass because it's like, dude, NFL defenses are all good. He did walk into one of the hardest divisions as far as defense. That you're a product of what you kind of inherit, and that's one thing. One reason, Colin Cowherd loves to talk about Joe Burrow not having a lot of success because he's going into that same division with the Ravens defense, the Steelers defense, and as far in Joe Burrow's case, the Browns defense, the Bengals defense is so. But I mean, those defenses are no slouch, and you're under a lot of pressure, and especially coming from people like Joe Burrow or like Baker Mayfield, who had a lot of college success and they blew a lot of teams out and they had a lot of time to stand in the pocket sometimes. That won't be the same case. And so it'll be interesting to see how another quarterback does in this, division in football where we're seeing young quarterbacks really struggle.
Well, I'd argue that the AFC East has tougher defenses than the AFC North does. Baltimore, of course, is a very good defense and very.
You're right, though.
But
you're right. New
England and Buffalo. And even Miami is pretty.
Miami this year. Miami
is on the come up. And Pittsburgh, they haven't had the same defense that they had. When you think of the Pittsburgh defenses, they have struggled a little bit, especially in the secondary where they're just starting to get it back. And Cincinnati
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry. That's a fair point. But Pittsburgh, they didn't go 8-5 because of Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges. I mean, they went 8-5 because they had enough defense and enough play from James Conner and Juju, and those guys obviously made throws. But what kept the Steelers afloat last year was their defense. And
of course,
it's not the steel curtain. Obviously, I'm not saying that, but they're a legit defense with a legit pass rush and Bud Dupree and Watt, and I think they can cause some havoc for young QBs for sure.
All I'm saying is that if you compare the defenses, the best defense in each division, I think the Patriots are better than the Ravens. Second best, I think the Bills are better than the Steelers. And that's really...
You would say you think the Patriots defense is better than the Ravens defense?
I would say that the Patriots defense is better than the Ravens. They have the best secondary in football, in my opinion. They have a very good front seven. The Ravens are a top 5 defense, don't get me wrong, but I think the Patriots are top 3, if not number 1.
That's a good debate idea. We talk about offense. Defense would be interesting.
Well, here's my thing here. Let me weigh in real quick.
No, please do.
If you're talking best defense in the league and you're gonna put Baltimore and New England at the top, likely, I would assume those would be the 2 likely picks that people would throw out there. If you think about it this way, the Patriots offense was not clicking very highly last year at all. I mean, they weren't bad by any means, but it was not on that same level as they're used to being. And the defense willed them to a lot of wins. The Ravens, on the other hand, it was mainly their offense that was willing them to a lot of wins. Without that offense, I don't think they're in the same position. But
what I like to do in that sense, I totally agree with your argument. But if you took if you just swapped the styles of play, like the Patriots ended up winning, I believe they went 12-4. I mean, they won a lot.
I think if you put the Ravens offense system in New England last year, they were probably a 15-1, 16-0 team. They would be dominant.
That's the only thing that's keeping me back, but I totally agree with you. I understand that, but if you just flip-flop the scenarios, both teams would be pretty all right.
Not to mention that New England had the Defensive Player of the Year in Stephon Gilmore. Baltimore didn't have that.
That was a controversial pick for Defensive Player of the Year, but still,
I don't think it
Gilmore
was.
It kind of was. But, I mean, there was.
He ran away from it from the get-go. He ran away with a Defensive Player of the Year from the get-go.
Fan perception.
It's hard, bro. It's hard to ignore big numbers, and when you catch I think he caught 6 picks or 7 picks. I mean, it's hard to ignore.
It was 7.
I think it's hard to ignore numbers. It's hard to.
Oh no, absolutely.